Dawn had just broken, painting faint streaks of light across the quiet countryside. From behind the living room curtains Clara, a mother of 3, peered out curiously. She only expected to see a stray animal, perhaps, but the sight before her made her stumble back in astonishment. Standing just beyond their wooden porch, in the middle of their gravel driveway, was a lion. A fully grown lioness. Her golden coat gleaming in the morning sun, muscles taut, eyes steady, not with aggression but with a look of urgent plea. But it wasn't just the lion that made Clara freeze. Gently cradled in the lioness's jaws was a cub, small, weak, and still. Clara quickly called for her husband, David, who rushed in with disbelief etched across his face. At first, he thought she was exaggerating, until he saw the bizarre scene himself. The lioness wasn't pacing or growling. She wasn't hunting. She was waiting, as if she had brought the cub to them for a reason. David slowly stepped out onto the porch, his voice low, trying not to startle the animal. The lioness didn't flinch, her eyes tracked him, but there was no sign of fear, no hint of threat. Then, in a deliberate and almost human-like motion, she walked forward and placed the limp cub at the edge of the porch, then stepped back. Clara was already dialing animal rescue, her hands trembling. But David had moved closer. He looked at the cub. It was still breathing, but barely. Its small body shivered, too fragile to be out here alone. And yet somehow, its mother had carried it out of the wild to a human home. By the time the first rescue truck pulled up, the scene looked more like something out of a movie than real life. A lioness standing guard. Her sick cub lying at the doorstep of a family who had never expected to be part of a miracle. And this was only the beginning. Animal control and rescue experts arrived within minutes. Stunned to find that the reports were true. A fully grown lioness was calmly standing in front of a family's porch, refusing to leave the cub she had delivered there. One of the officers, a seasoned wildlife handler named Sarah, approached slowly with tranquilizer gear ready. But Clara stepped forward, explaining what they had witnessed. She didn't come to attack, Clara said firmly. She brought her baby here like she knew we could help. Sarah had never seen anything like it. Wild animals didn't behave this way, especially apex predators like lions. But this one wasn't pacing or aggressive. She was watching, waiting, and somehow trusting. The rescue team gently picked up the cub. Its breathing was shallow, and its eyes were closed. Its small body was weak with fever and showed clear signs of malnutrition. Sarah turned to her team. "We need to move fast," she said. "This cub won't make it through the night without fluids and warmth." The moment the cub was lifted, the lioness stood up straighter, but didn't move forward. Instead, she let out a low, deep rumble. More of a plea than a threat. And stayed in place as the team carefully carried her baby into the truck. It was clear to everyone there she wasn't leaving because she distrusted them. She wasn't leaving because she wasn't done. The Jensens watched, hearts pounding, as the rescue vehicle pulled away, but the lioness didn't follow. She turned and sat back down on the grass near the driveway, watching the house, watching the people who now held her cub's fate in their hands. Night fell and she remained there. Hours passed. Rain began to fall, but the lioness didn't budge. Clara couldn't sleep. She stood by the window long after midnight, watching the motionless figure in the darkness, lit only by the porch light and occasional flash of lightning. It was heartbreaking. This wasn't just instinct. This was something deeper. The lioness had risked everything, venturing into human territory with a dying cub. The question believed someone could help. The question that now haunted Clara and David was, how did she know where to go? Why them, and would her cub even make it? At the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center the atmosphere was tense. The tiny lion cub was laid out on a heated table. A soft blanket wrapped around its fragile body. Its breathing was irregular, its heartbeat faint. Veterinarian Dr. Robert Miller worked quickly, inserting a small IV into the cub's leg, while a technician adjusted the oxygen mask. Robert had dealt with critically ill animals before. But this case was different, not just because of the cub's condition, but because of how it had arrived. As he monitored the vitals, something caught his attention. The cub's coat had unusual discoloration around its belly and sides, evidence of an untreated infection that had likely stemmed from an old injury. It wasn't life-threatening on its own, but combined with dehydration and fever, it could have easily turned fatal if left untreated for even another day. "She brought him just in time," Robert muttered, shaking his head. "Another few hours and we would have lost him." Back at the Jensen house, the lioness remained at the edge of their property. Animal control set up a temporary perimeter. But no one dared move her. She wasn't hostile, just heartbreakingly still, her eyes never leaving the house. When Sarah called the center with an update on the cub's condition, Clara asked if they could play her voice over the phone near the lioness. "Let her know her cub is still alive," she said. Sarah was skeptical but agreed. They placed the phone near the edge of the porch and held it on speaker. Clara spoke softly, "Your baby is okay. He's safe, they're taking care of him." To everyone's amazement, the lioness responded. Not with a roar or a growl, but with a deep chuff, a sound lions use only with those they trust. Then she laid her head down in the grass, ears twitching slightly, as if she understood. Meanwhile, back at the center, Robert and his team worked through the night. The antibiotics were starting to take effect, and by dawn, the cub's temperature had stabilized. It was still too early to celebrate. But the fact that it had survived the night was nothing short of a miracle. And then something even more surprising happened. When Robert scanned the cub for a microchip, just to be thorough, he found one. The data revealed something no one could have guessed. The cub had been born in a protected reserve miles away, in a remote part of the wilderness that no lion had ever left on its own. Which begged the question, how did the lioness travel this far? And why had she come to the Jensen's door? The answer Robert would soon find out, would leave him and everyone else speechless. The moment Dr. Robert confirmed the cub's microchip registration, he knew something wasn't adding up. The records showed the cub's mother had once been tagged as a rescued lioness, brought in as an injured cub herself over a decade ago. Her name was Zara, and she had been nursed back to health by a former wildlife volunteer working at the sanctuary. That volunteer's name Clara Jensen. Robert double-checked the file, then picked up the phone and called Clara. "Did you volunteer at the Riverbend Wildlife Reserve about 11 years ago?" he asked, his voice tight with disbelief. "Yes," she answered slowly. "That was a long time ago. I worked with a cub named Zara. She had a leg injury." "Why?" Robert paused. "Because the lion at your house right now, the one who brought you her cub. That's her." There was silence on the other end of the line. Clara sat down stunned. She had spent nearly a year rehabilitating Zara as a young lioness before she was released into the wild. She remembered every scar, every moment of bonding, how Zara would crow beside her enclosure during thunderstorms, how she'd respond to Clara's voice. But that was more than a decade ago. Zara had disappeared into the wilderness like so many others. There was no reason to believe she'd even survived, let alone that she would remember. And yet she had somehow, against all odds. Zara had remembered the human who once cared for her. And when her own cub fell sick, when the wild offered no safety, no answer, Zara had walked miles across unfamiliar terrain and brought her baby to the only person she believed could help. Clara couldn't hold back the tears. This wasn't just about instinct. It wasn't about luck. This was something else entirely. A mother's love, yes, but also loyalty, memory, recognition. She told Robert to do whatever it took to get the cub strong enough to return home. They owed Zara that much. Robert agreed. Meanwhile, news of Zara's incredible journey began to spread. Wildlife experts were baffled, some dismissed it as coincidence. Others said it was impossible. But those who had worked with animals long enough knew better. There are things in nature that can't always be explained. Bonds that go deeper than science can measure. And Zara had just proven that some connections never fade, no matter how many years pass. 3 days later, the cub was strong enough to move. Not fully recovered, but stable, eating, standing. And letting out small, croaky cries that sounded stronger each hour. Robert had spent every waking moment monitoring its vitals, and the turnaround was nothing short of remarkable. But now came the question everyone had been quietly avoiding. Would Zara accept her cub back after their time apart? Reuniting wild animals isn't always as simple as opening a gate. If a mother no longer recognizes her cub or senses it carries the scent of humans, she might walk away or worse, reject it completely. But Clara refused to believe that was the outcome waiting for them. Zara had risked everything to bring her baby here. She had waited outside their house for 3 nights straight. She hadn't forgotten. She wouldn't now. The team loaded the cub into a travel crate lined with warm blankets, and made the drive back to the Jensen home, where Zara was unbelievably still waiting. She had moved to the edge of the nearby field. Never far, never aggressive, just watchful waiting. Clara stepped out, her heart racing. The moment Zara saw her, she stood up, head raised, her tail low but relaxed. Robert opened the crate and gently lifted the cub out. It squirmed in his arms, eyes fluttering open, and then from the cub's tiny throat came a soft whimper. Zara's ears perked, her muscles tensed, not in fear, but in recognition. She stepped forward slowly, closing the distance between her and Clara without hesitation. Then she paused, eyes locked on her cub. Robert carefully set the cub down and stepped away. What happened next left everyone silent. Zara let out a low vibrating chuff, the same sound she used to greet Clara all those years ago. The cub responded with a faint mew. And then Zara moved. Gently, with the kind of care only a mother can show, she nudged her cub with her nose, licked its face, and lay down beside it, pulling it close with one enormous paw. Tears ran freely down Clara's face. Robert said nothing. There was nothing to say. No one dared interrupt the moment. Zara hadn't just remembered where to go. She had remembered who to trust. As the sun began to set behind the hills, painting the sky in soft orange and gold, Zara turned her head once more. Her eyes met Clara's, and though no words were spoken, the meaning was clear. She had come for help, and now she was taking her baby home. The days that followed were quiet, but something had shifted for everyone who witnessed what happened. Zara and her cub disappeared back into the forest, but not before Clara saw them one last time, standing at the tree line early the next morning. Zara didn't approach, didn't linger. She simply stood there. Her cub nestled close to her side, and watched the house for a moment. Then, without a sound, she turned and vanished into the trees, her mission complete. Word of what happened spread beyond their town. Wildlife experts, media outlets, and animal behaviorists tried to explain it, but none could agree on a single reason. Some said it was instinct. Others called it coincidence. But those who were there knew it was something deeper. It was trust. A bond built years ago between a young volunteer and a wounded cub, one that hadn't faded with time or distance. Clara kept a photo of Zara from her days at the sanctuary. It now sat on the mantel beside a new one. A blurry snapshot of Zara and her cub walking back into the wild, taken from the porch the moment they left. She often looked at it, still unable to fully believe what had happened. But more than anything, she felt honored. Honored that Zara had remembered, that she had come back. That when her own cub's life was on the line, she chose to return to the person who once saved hers. And maybe that's what makes this story so unforgettable. Not just the miracle of survival or the reunion between mother and child, but the quiet, powerful message behind it. That love leaves a mark. That trust once earned can last a lifetime. And that sometimes, the wild remembers more than we give it credit for. Thank you so much for watching until the end of the video. What did you think about the story? Please share your thoughts and feelings about it in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, so you won't miss the next interesting and surprising stories that I will bring. Thank you once again, and see you again.